What's going on, guys? Chase with iDub Hockey. I'm hanging out with Dan, who's the product manager for Sherwood Hockey. Dan, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. We've got your two families of sticks, the new Code series as well as the Rekker series. So if I was someone who was looking to purchase a Sherwood stick for the first time, I don't quite know the differences between the two. How would I go about figuring out which stick family best suits my game?
So that is one of the most exciting parts about creating these two families, is that we're trying to address every level of player. And every guy comes in, you're either a shooter or a passer. You're a grinder or a goal scorer. You are, a big body or a wheels guy. Everybody has different types of characteristics to their game. And no one stick is ideally suited for those players, because there are times when you need to be a shooter and there are times when you need to dangle somebody. But creating these different characteristics are very important to us. We've got a great history and family established in Rekker, which is known as a low kick stick, has a slightly more rounded shaft to it, and has a specific following, a great following for many, many years. And we've enhanced that, obviously, with the M90 series. That we find is really well suited for a player who likes to get it on and get it off quickly. Player who's down below the circles, perhaps, or wants to walk it out from the corner and try and jam it in, or has to elevate it very, very quickly. We find the Rekker series is able to do that with that low kick point, that rounder shaft for constant hand position changes. And the Rekker M90 is really a stick that is well suited for that. The texture in that shaft really allows the player, no matter where that bottom hand is positioned, they've always got maximum grip. And the slightly more concave wall to it gives you a finger position that we find really promotes that ability to get it away quickly. The Code series, when we introduced Code 5, is a little bit more of a squarer shaft. It has a less pronounced radius in the top corners, slightly taller sidewall, and not as pronounced a concave slot, if you will, in the fingers for your bottom hand. We find that the hybrid kick point also creates higher shot velocity, but it does take slightly longer to load. It's a longer lever. So to bend that and release it naturally creates more velocity, but it's for a player perhaps who is a great passer, who's got some time to get a pass away, or has some time to get a shot away from the tops of the circles or the hash marks, or perhaps for a defenseman. For somebody who likes to shoot it and likes to really load it up and get it away, that's where Code, I think, will give them the real benefit. The texture on the shaft is also something that is a little bit more widely spaced and more just on the corners of the shaft itself. So that player perhaps has a more fixed hand position, or keeps that bottom hand in a more fixed position longer, if you will, than Code. For a guy who's constantly up and down in that shaft, that's a great Rekker family, and that texture will benefit them. And for a player who basically wants to lean on it, that gives you Code. And a player who actually likes to dish and has some time to have a look and make that nice sauce into the scoring areas, Code really, really makes that happen for you.
Perfect. I like how you pretty much cover the full gamut of styles of shooters and styles of play. Like you said, it's not just about shooting, but it's about stick handling and your passing too. So it's really cool to see you guys cover all styles of play with your two families. Now, as you do that, I'd imagine there's a lot of key technologies that, we only find in Code that really help accentuate, the powerful release compared to Rekker that has that quick release. So as you mentioned before, they're different kick points. So what really creates that in each family? And, what does that do for the player specifically?
When we moved down the road to create Code 5, what we wanted to do is ensure that we had a noticeable variance in kick point from what our previous families were. So in order to do that, we looked at the various different layups and how to change your kick point in the layup. And then we also looked at geometry. And geometry, that is not only shaft shape, the circumference, the sidewalls, the top, the spine, and basically the taper, if you will. In order to change your kick point in a stick, you need to address both taper and overall layup, stiffness in the various areas. So we found after testing a number of different shapes that by going to this code shape, creating the tool that addressed a slightly wider hosel, a slightly narrower hosel here, which created some great rigidity, torsional rigidity, we were able to actually move our taper up slightly without sacrificing any performance. The taper that you see on a Rekker stick is a little bit more narrow through the hosel and perhaps a little bit more robust in the width of it. Mm-hmm. So very, very varied characteristics or visions when you put the two sticks beside each other. And ultimately, those are contributing to that slightly higher or hybrid kick point. We wouldn't make a claim that it is a super high kick point because we find you lose a little bit of the performance characteristics on those times when you do need to get it away quickly. So having a slightly lower, but not a true low kick point gives the Code 5 the kind of best of both worlds.
Yeah, and like we've mentioned before in the actual code video, the game is so fast these days that you just don't have the time to take that huge shot. So, you don't want to forget about the more powerful shooters out there, but you want to make sure they have a stick that is best in almost all the scenarios out there. So we covered your kick point and tapers. We already talked about shaft dimensions, how they differ. We have a new blade core in the code, which does differentiate the two families a little bit more too. So from an overall feel perspective and maybe a stiffness profile, how would you differentiate the new code series from the Rekker line?
It's super interesting that you say differentiate, because we had to have a blade that would have some performance characteristic differences from Rekker, because we've created a slightly longer lever, which we felt was going to create greater shot velocities. So we had to look at durability, because if we had put the same blade from Rekker onto code, we feel that the relationship between blade and shaft may not have worked perfectly. Right. So how do we achieve that? We looked at the foam that we were injecting in our blades, that VRF foam, vibration reduction foam, and we changed the density of the foam and the length of the carbon bridge that reaches through it. And that, we feel, gave us a dampness or a feel, if you will, that would give us something in close proximity, but help us address the change in velocity. So we wanted it to still have that feel that you're accustomed to finding with Sherwood sticks, and at the same time, not lose any durability and make sure we maintain our accuracy. And key here is, if you've got a stick that's going to give you greater release velocities, you definitely don't want to be sacrificing any accuracy. It's great to rip it wide off the glass. Everybody hears it, but it's not going to score any goals for you. So we wanted to make sure that we kept that feel that you're accustomed to with Sherwood sticks, but by increasing the density of our VRF foam, VRF HD, we're able to get that kind of soft feel, but max performance out of it.
So a little more dampened than what we find in Rekker, and a little bit more accurate because it's a little bit stiffer with that carbon bridge. So for those players that are using Rekker currently, maybe thinking about trying out this code stick, I just wanted to give them a good idea of how at least the puck feel will vary between that.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity, and if the player is fortunate enough to be able to shoot in a shooting gallery or even on ice and test, it's really interesting if they get a chance to go and try one-timers with a Rekker and one-timers with a code, and then, quick snapshots from the hash marks with a Rekker and a code, because what they're going to find is one outperforms the other in one aspect, and the other one would be an opposite characteristic. So it really depends where you find that you're spending the majority of your time in game, and that's gonna allow you to achieve or find the stick that best suits you.
Well, I can't wait to do that myself. I've said it before, that EK15 is one of my favorite sticks of all time. So I've naturally been more of a Rekker kind of guy as far as the Sherwood families go. But with this new code series, once everything opens back up, I can't wait to get out and do that test like you were mentioning.
The one thing I'll mention, and you call in a great heritage piece for us at EK15 that actually started the elevation of the Sherwood brand. But at the same time, some of the things that we've done in here set that so far back in the Stone Ages. You'll fall in love with this stick when you get a chance to play it.
It's EK15 Part 2.
There you go.
Hey, Dan, thank you so much for joining us today and walking us through these two families.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And then for you guys at home that want to check out the new Code series or the new Rekker series, make sure you go to icewarehouse.com.